Praise be to Jesus. Hi everyone, Charles here with you. These are your Catholic news briefs for Saturday, October 13th, 2018. Vatican advisor and pro-LGBT priest Father Thomas Rossia tweeted his praise for Cardinal Wuerl after news broke today that Pope Francis accepted the Cardinal's resignation. Give thanks to God that men like Donald Wuerl entered our lives, touched us, encouraged us, taught us, and left us a powerful example of leadership, humility, and service to the Lord and the Church, the Basilian priest wrote on Twitter. Thank you, Cardinal Wuerl, for your leadership, your example, your courage, your honesty, and witness, and your humility. You have been and remain a great teacher. Rossia tweeted that Wuerl had been hounded from office. Pennsylvania's top prosecutor has appealed to legislators to do the right thing and change state law so that civil cases can be pursued in court in decades-old clergy abuse cases. The Pennsylvania House has voted to give child sex abuse victims, in cases now too old to pursue, 2 years to file lawsuits. But the Senate Republican leaders are balking. Shapiro says he doesn't know how any lawmaker who read the grand jury report could vote against changing the law. And in a related story, the prosecutor who released a grand jury report in August on rampant sex abuse in 6 Pennsylvania dioceses says it is unacceptable that Washington Cardinal Donald Wuerl is retiring with no apparent consequences. Attorney General Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania said Friday, the grand jury report and diocesan records documented Wuerl oversaw and participated in a systematic cover-up of child sexual abuse by clergymen while leading the Pittsburgh Diocese. The Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Buffalo, criticized for his handling of alleged abuse by clergy, says a high-ranking U.S. cardinal didn't check on the facts. WKBW-TV reports Bishop Richard Malone said Thursday it was unfortunate that Cardinal Sean O'Malley of the Archdiocese of Boston didn't reach out to hear our side of the story. He says the television station's investigation into his handling of alleged abuse by priests misrepresented the truth. Malone has been facing calls to resign after the investigation found he allowed multiple priests accused of misconduct to return to their ministry. O'Malley said earlier this week he reviewed the reports and wanted the Vatican to step in. Young people are hungry for mission, Bishop Robert Barron said Friday during the 2018 Synod of Bishops convened to discuss young people, the faith, and vocational discernment. They're hungry for involvement in the life of the Church and to be out in the field declaring the Lord, Barron said at an October 12 Vatican press conference. In his 4-minute intervention at the Synod of Bishops, he called for a greater intellectual faith formation of young people, particularly catechesis and apologetics. As always, the Church's first move in regard to everybody, in regard to gay and lesbians, is to reach out and say, "You are a beloved child of God," Barron responded to reporters in Rome. It is under that rubric that the Church does its work. Now, having said that, the Church also calls people to conversion. So Jesus calls, but then he always moves people to fullness of life. And so the church also has a set of moral demands to everybody, and it calls them to conversion, Barron continued. Well, there are a lot of people who disagree. Disagree with him on many points, but one point being putting the cart before the horse. In other words, accepting them into the church, before their conversion and their heartfelt, going to talk with a priest and confessing and admitting that they're committing serious sins. So, well, we have a lot of news. I need to move on. A new report published Thursday in Scotland shows that children suffered abuse at 2 children's care homes run by Catholic religious orders, both of which have been closed for decades. The Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry said that the 2 children's facilities run by the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, Smearlam Park in Lanark, and Bellevue House in Rutherglen, were places of fear, coercive control, threat, excessive discipline, and emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, where they found no love, no compassion, no dignity, and no comfort. The interim report said that the children at the homes were systematically starved of love, dignity, and compassion. In August, police arrested around a dozen former members of the staff at Smearlam Park, which closed in 1981, on charges of historic abuse. All those arrested were over 60 years old. The Sisters of Charity of Quebec said they were surprised and troubled by allegations that children who once stayed at the Mont de Yorville orphanage in Quebec City were sexually abused not only by lay educators, but also by nuns. The allegations came in a revised petition to the Quebec Superior Court from a former orphanage resident seeking designation of a class action lawsuit, the first in Quebec province that named a woman's religious congregation. The original request for class action by Jean Simard, 56, was limited to lay educators at the orphanage. Since then, other alleged victims came forward, and on September 24th, Simard's attorney modified the petition to include some victims who said that they had been abused by nuns. The Boston Archdiocese will expand an ongoing review to now examine all 3 seminaries within its borders, following allegations that arose this summer of sexual misconduct and questions of moral conduct at one of the schools. In August, Boston Cardinal Sean O'Malley opened an inquiry into St. John's Seminary in Brighton after 2 former seminarians posted on the Archdiocese Facebook page allegations of sexual advances, sexual misconduct, and excessive alcohol consumption among seminarians. On October 11th, O'Malley announced that investigation will now include reviews of Pope St. John XXIII National Seminary in Weston and Redemptoris Mater Seminary in Chestnut Hill. In a statement, O'Malley said he decided to expand the scope after a consultation period about the seminaries, and in an effort to meet the generally expected levels of transparency and accountability in light of questions of confidence in church leadership amid the latest chapter in its sexual abuse scandal. Pope Francis's praise of Cardinal Wuerl for his nobility and docility to the Spirit, in his letter accepting the Cardinal's resignation, singles that Francis is not the Pope to clean out the stables of the abuse crisis that is rocking the Church, a Catholic scholar said. Oxford University's Dr. Joseph Shaw told LifeSite News that Pope Francis's October 12th letter accepting Cardinal Wuerl's resignation makes it very clear that he doesn't want to punish his subordinate. In the Roman Curia and in many bishops' conferences, there is a widespread attitude that bishops and senior officials should never be publicly disgraced. There should be no bruta figura, and that apparently means loss of face, Shaw explained. Even when sacked for bad behavior, they should be allowed to depart in a dignified manner. One would expect, then, a carefully worded and diplomatic send-off from the Pope on such an occasion. But Pope Francis's letter goes far beyond this. It sounds like a letter written by a political leader forced to sack an underling very much against his will, he continued. It seems remarkable to Shaw that Pope Francis has failed to use this opportunity to distance himself from the nightmarish, interconnected abuse allegations and convictions rocking the Catholic Church in the USA. He seems to be sending the signal that he is not the Pope to clean out the stables, Shaw remarked. 3 days after posting on Twitter that he does not want or have Jesus as king, Brisbane Archbishop Coleridge broke his silence, clarifying that he does not favor royalist ideologies. I worship Jesus reigning from the cross, whose kingdom is not of this world, and who casts the mighty from their thrones. I don't favor royalist ideologies of this world, which make Christ remote, the church triumphalist, the Pope and bishops princely, etc. He tweeted on October 10th. The Brisbane Archbishop's words sparked a backlash of tweets, some of which condemned the prelate's words, while others sought to make sure that he meant his words to be taken at face value. LifeSite News reached out to Brisbane Chancery seeking clarification on his original tweet, but never received a reply. Catholics hold, following the Book of Revelation, that Jesus is the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. St. Paul teaches in his letter to the Philippians that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth. The Church is clear that the kingship of Christ is not simply spiritual. In his 1925 encyclical, Quaes Primas, which instituted the Feast of Christ the King, Pope Pius XI called it a grave error for one to say that Christ has no authority whatever in civil affairs. This is the case, he said, since by virtue of the absolute empire over all creatures committed to him by the Father, all things are in his power. At the behest of its Grand Chancellor, the Trouble Order of Malta is placing a gag order on criticism of the Pope. Church Militant has obtained a copy of an internal letter dated September 5th, forbidding members from commenting publicly on making public statements about Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano's allegations that Pope Francis lifted sanctions from former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, despite knowing the former cardinal is a serial sex predator. It is not the mission of the Order of Malta to participate in the debate concerning the current crisis. The letter signed by Grand Master Fra Giacomo Dalla Torres asserts. Therefore, official participation of members in the public debate regarding the aforementioned issues, beyond condemning abuse in general, is not helpful and could interfere with our work. Accordingly, public statements regarding this issue should be the sole prescript of the Grand Magistracy, the letter continues. Each entity of the order and every officer of any of its organizations should be proscribed from making public statements and should refrain from making comments on behalf of the Order of Malta, except for joining me in the invitation for prayer. Late last month, Illinois Supreme Court Justice Ann Burke resigned in disgust over the directive. I feel that I cannot remain silent, and I no longer wish to be part of a Catholic organization that is unwilling to take a stand on these issues, Judge Burke told Peter J. Kelly, head of the U.S. Association. I will continue to speak out about the need to investigate the underlying causes and conduct by our hierarchy in the church that permitted these crimes to continue. Well, good for her. And excellent. That's a good way to end the newscast. I wish I could end a newscast with such nice words every time, but that doesn't happen. Okay, well, that's it for Saturday, or at least Saturday morning. So enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you again soon. St. Michael prayers coming up. Bye.